The very society they expect men to protect is the one that has created an openly hostile environment. They deride masculinity, but then wonder, where are all the strong men at? They discourage boys from roughhousing, physical activity, and competition, and then act surprised when these boys act like girls. They claim gym culture is toxic, but question why men can't complete even the most basic physical task. This again is the double standard that people like Dr. K ignore over and over by sticking their heads in the sand. Hello, everyone. I'm continuing my series with Dr. K and Steve Bartlett on men's supposed dating issues. Let's see their thoughts on how best to help men to be successful in the dating market.
I mean, there's a lot that I'm thinking about. The first is, if we go back up to your point about this being a bit of an extinction event, it poses a question about, like, what do you do about that? Mm-hmm. You said also people are trying to implement the advice, but it's not working. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean that that's a question of, like, motivation, discipline? Is it bad advice? What do we do there? And the third, I guess, question that comes to mind is, does society have a responsibility to intervene in some way to correct this?
If there's one group of people that I despise more than any others, it is grifters. These are people who pretend to be on your side. They pretend to be your ally. They pretend to support you. But secretly, they are using you. They are manipulating you, whether it be for your time, for your money, your support, or something else. They are actively hurting the people they claim, on the surface at least, to be helping. Dr. K and Steve Bartlett, the host of this show, Diary of a CEO, which we're reacting to, are grifters. They have no interest in helping men to be better. They have no interest in making society better. They only care about men's issues insofar as how they can financially benefit from it. We've already talked at length about how Dr. K is exploiting the situation for his own benefit. Let's talk for a moment about how Steve, the host, is doing the same. The job of any good host, including a podcast, is to advocate for the people in the audience. Part of that includes challenging the views and the opinions of their guest. Dr. K has talked at great length, way too long, about his views on men, on dating, and on procreation. However, he's provided no evidence outside of his own opinions on the topic. Steve does nothing to challenge the validity of those statements. Where is the proof that just talking to girls leads men to success in dating and relationships? Are there any studies? Any research? Anything anywhere that his method on its own leads to success? As of this point, there is none. In fact, there is no evidence in this entire 20-plus minute segment to support any premise that Dr. K has provided. Yet, even with this situation, Steve doesn't provide any pushback. Instead, he gives Dr. K carte blanche on his platform with 1.5 million subscribers to accuse large, very large segments of the male population as being angry and entitled because we want to procreate with basically any woman that we want, any woman we see on the street. You'll have one segment of the audience, largely women, who will wholeheartedly agree with this without any proof. The other segment, mostly men, will just see this as another man-bashing video and tune out anything that is said, rightfully so. How is that helping anybody? It isn't. All it does is drive engagement and clicks. Now, as a content creator myself, I understand how important that is, but you can drive engagement while also providing useful guidance to men. That is not happening here. When men can't trust the expert voices in their own community for guidance, counsel, and support, Where are they supposed to go? These struggling men are further driven underground as Dr. K becomes yet another voice, as if there aren't already enough. He just becomes another voice criticizing them while providing absolutely no useful information whatsoever on how to address their concerns.
So I think, does society have a responsibility? I don't think that is a real thing. So I have never seen society take a responsibility. I don't think society can take a responsibility, right? So if like how do I get society? Like who do I talk to?
But if you think about other people that are in marginalized groups, society intervenes to make the
Who is
world,
society?
the governments, and the way that we make our laws and the way that we give out money and grants and the way that we shape our communities.
Yeah, so I understand the question, but I think like this, and this is just the way that I think. So if I ask you what is society, you say the government. And then who is the government? What is the government? It's people.
Yeah.
So I think this comes down to forget about societal responsibility. And I think this is one of the problems, not to say that it is the problem, but this is just the way that I think.
I don't think society can take a responsibility. Really? Really? If you ever needed proof that Dr. K is a grifter, here it is. He is saying, literally, that it is impossible for society to take any action to help men whatsoever. That is unbelievable. Let me be clear on something. A man does have to have some motivation to better himself. If he works as a Walmart cashier, goes home, plays video games for hours, and expects that that's going to attract a quality woman, he doesn't have a chance. He has to put some effort into building himself up. If you are a fat, lazy slob of a man, and then you go and complain on Reddit that women aren't interested in you, then you are a loser, and you do deserve to be shamed. Go to the gym, learn some skills, at least try to improve your situation. You can't expect others to fully drag you across the finish line. Expecting men to carry some of their own load does not excuse society from having any responsibility towards men. You hear business leaders, politicians, and women in general complaining about how, oh, there are no good men. There are no hardworking men. All these men are just lazy. Yet, when it comes to providing those struggling men some help, any help, what is the result? That is the sound of silence, because there is no help. Where is the help for men who want to start their own businesses? Where is the help for men who want to start a family? Where is the help for men who grew up in single mother homes without a father, like myself, and are trying to learn the skills to be a productive member of society? They are nowhere at all to be found. And of course, somehow, that is still a man's fault.
There was a case, I don't remember her name, of a woman who's being sexually assaulted in public, like on a street at nighttime. And there were a bunch of neighbors who were like aware that the sexual assault was happening, and no one called for help. And the reason no one called for help is because everyone assumed that somebody else would call for help.
Isn't this cute? Dr. K just finished saying that society doesn't have a responsibility to men, but then laments why nobody stepped up to help a woman who was murdered in New York. As you can see on this community note that's on the page, the murder occurred 61 years ago. Why would Dr. K reference such an old crime? Well, it's pretty simple. We've seen the results when men try to get involved and help. Does anyone recall the story from May 2023 when a man tried to stop an attacker on a New York City subway? Daniel Penny, a former Marine, used his training to subdue a knife-wielding attacker on that subway train. Because the attacker was ruled to have died from Daniel's actions, I'm not sure how, he faced manslaughter charges. Daniel did. He was eventually acquitted in December 2024, 17 months later. His reward was having to face prosecution and have his name dragged through the mud as a murderer. Recently, in the UK, several male train passengers threw off a naked man that was disturbing other travelers. Instead of going after the naked man for his behavior, the police went looking for the men who had removed him from the train car. Again, those trying to help get punished. Dr. K wants men to step up and help society, but doesn't see any obligation for society to help men. Worse, the very society they expect men to protect is the one that has created an openly hostile environment. They deride masculinity, but then wonder, where are all the strong men at? They discourage boys from roughhousing, physical activity, and competition, and then act surprised when these boys act like girls. They claim gym culture is toxic, but question why men can't complete even the most basic physical task. This again is the double standard that people like Dr. K ignore over and over by sticking their heads in the sand. When masculinity directly helps women, the government or business, then they want it in spades. Please bring it on. The rest of the time, it's hated. You can't have it both ways. If you want masculinity, you're going to get masculinity, but you can't pick and choose when it's available to you.
Whose problem is it? Oh, society should fix this. And the moment that we say society should fix this, we stop taking individual responsibility. And the moment that we stop taking individual responsibility, like unless someone shows up and runs for office and says, my goal is to do this, which by the way is happening in like South Korea. So like conservatives that are very like, there's this huge tension in South Korea right now between men and women, and this 4B movement where women are like, we're not gonna have kids anymore. And then there's like this conservative kind of like pro-masculine kind of movement that is moving into government and says like, this needs to change. We see governments responding to this mating crisis, right? So I think like China is now paying people to have children. So there's all kinds of like moves that are happening. So is it society's responsibility? Like, I don't know. So I think if society doesn't do anything, what's going to happen will be really simple. And that's what I mean by we're witnessing a mass extinction event.
Isn't it amazing how Dr. K suddenly brings up personal responsibility? I could actually get behind that if the premise was applied equally to everyone. However, we know that isn't how Dr. K plans to use it. If a woman has an unexpected pregnancy and has an abortion, is she taking personal responsibility for her behavior? On the other hand, let's assume she keeps it and raises it as a single mother. Is she taking personal responsibility if she relies on welfare and the government to pay for the child's expenses? Although it was eventually overturned, for a while, California had a law that forced corporations, forced them to have at least one woman on the board of directors, regardless of her qualifications. Is that personal responsibility? What about when a woman uses no-fault divorce on a rich husband and takes half of his wealth? Or hell, even a moderately wealthy husband. Is that personal responsibility? Calling for personal responsibility is easy when you're in the driver's seat. Dr. K has a wife and I believe a single daughter, or one daughter. He is established in his career and he has money. He doesn't need help anymore. So he has no problem pulling up the ladder behind him. It's the same thing with government and business. For 70 plus years, the playing field has been tilted, often very heavily towards women. Now, it's men that are falling behind in so many areas. However, women don't want to give up all the goodies that help them to get where they are. As a result, the politicians and the business owners, they just keep those policies in place. Let me show you a few examples of how the money is really being used when it comes to businesses, schooling, and government. As you can see here, I used Grok and I asked Grok how much money has the US federal government spent on women-specific causes from 2010 through 2019. Now, Grok got a little annoyed about it, and I should have said women-driven initiatives, and I changed that with future prompts. But if you go down here and you look, let's look at what the National Institute of Health spends. So from that period, from 2010 to 2019, funding for research on conditions disproportionately affecting women, reproductive health, breast cancer, osteoporosis via the NIH research, condition, and disease categorization category for women's health. So it averaged 4.1 billion per year, so a total of $41 billion. Then we go down here, WIC, Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. So provides nutrition assistance to pregnant, postpartum, and breastfeeding women, along with infants and children. That's $65 million. Now here's an interesting note. Men can apply for it for their infants and for the children, so if they're a single father, but the father can't get any for himself. How is that fair? But that's just a whole nother piece to this bigger problem. Then we go down here, Title X Family Planning, funds family planning services, preventative health and screenings and reproductive health primarily for low-income women, $2.9 billion. Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, there's another $4 billion. So we're talking about, and then finally, Title V Material and Child Health Block Grant, fund state programs for maternal health, prenatal care, and family support services, $6 billion. All of this primarily women-based. Look at that, over $100 billion. Now, we go past all of this, and as you can see here, I said using similar criteria, compare that to federal spending on initiatives with the primary beneficiaries being men. The National Institute of Health Men's Research, $19.5 billion. The same thing, $41 billion for women, but $19.5 billion. Funding for research on conditions disproportionately or exclusively affecting men. Prostate cancer, testicular cancer, male reproductive health, blah, 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 blah. As it notes here, roughly 6% of the total NIH budget versus 14% for women. DOD congressionally mandated medical research program, prostate cancer. So as you can see, funds primarily specifically on prostate cancer, $0.9 billion. That's it. That's it. So $20 billion here for men, while over $100 billion for women. Then we go down here, and I initially was looking at grants or scholarships for schooling, but there is a no discrimination thing in the federal government. So I went and looked at private grants because I said, okay, well, I know that there's women only scholarships and women only money out there for schooling. So it comes from private only scholarships. So if we look down here, we can see it doesn't show the numbers, but it shows from 2010 to 2019, we've got 55,000 awards. It says, okay, scaling to all institutions, 500,000 awards of women-only scholarships over the 10-year period. And then using major national organizations, we've got another 20,000. So we've got 520,000 scholarships exclusively for women. Now, let's go down here to men. Please compare this data to the number of men-only private scholarships during the same period using the same aggregate method. 4,800, 50,000, 2,000. So 52,000 scholarships available that are male only. And it says men receive 40% of all private scholarships during this period. Lower likelihood than women, 10.6% versus 13.1%, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of read the rest here, but it's the same thing. So then I took this one step further. I said, during the period from 2010 to 2019, using publicly available information in the United States, estimate the number and dollar amount of business and business-related loans, grants, and scholarships available exclusively to women-owned or run businesses versus those exclusively for men-owned or men-run businesses. So it pretty much said that the only real things that there were loans. So it says here, where is the note? Men-exclusive programs are virtually non-existent, with no confirmed examples from 2010 to 2019. Amazing. Not a single male-only grant. But if we look down here, it says, so major national women's exclusive grants. So 1,000 to 2,500 awards, 10,000 to 25 million. So average $10,000 per award to women only. And then if it said if we're scaling it to local, state, and smaller programs, is that another 5 to 15 million dollars. And then broader trends in women exclusive funding, again, just shows here women only firms grew to 12.3 million by 2018, driving demand for targeted grants. So male exclusive programs, almost non-existent. So then I took one final step here. I said, from the last several queries, you have identified a significant disparity in money spent and available exclusively for women-focused initiatives, women's education, and women-owned, women-led businesses when compared to the same options for men during the period of 2010 through 2019. Using available resources, extrapolate the most likely reasons for this significant disparity. So, it notes here, historical efforts to address past discrimination and underrepresentation of women, because we really need to keep doing that. Stronger advocacy and organizational focus on women. Again, the government is in the women's back pocket. Perceived ongoing barriers and societal priorities favoring women's empowerment. Of course, we've got to continue to favor women. Institutional and inertia policy frameworks. Once established, programs were slow to adapt to changing demographics. Title X interpretations allow women's-only scholarships at over half of colleges, despite potential violations when men become underrepresented. So as soon as men are the ones needing the help, guess what? They'll just, it's a violation, and they'll just allow it to happen. And then one last thing. Based on data from 2020 to current day, does the observed ratios of men to women exclusive spending, 6-to-1 federal spending, 10-to-1 scholarships, 30-to-1 business grants, appear justified to maintain equality in these domains? And then it says here, federal spending on gender-specific causes. So this is the NIH. And where does it say here? Justification assessment. Partially justified. Women's higher morbidity and historical under research supports continued focus, but the ratio seems excessive given men's mortality gaps. Equality might require rebalancing towards men's issues. So even Grok is saying here that there should be more money spent on men's specific health. Think about how men are unaliving themselves at what, 4-to-1, 5-to-1, maybe 6-to-1 ratios? But we don't see that that's a problem. We don't think that the National Institute of Health, the federal government, should be spending money on that? That's crazy. Private education scholarships, justification assessment, not justified. With women ahead in access and outcomes, the high ratio of women-only scholarships may exacerbate inequality rather than correct it. Reforms, it notes several reforms, could better promote parity as current disparities risk discouraging male participation. And you wonder why men aren't going to college. It's easy to go to college when you have lots of money available for you. Heck, if I could get a full ride for a master's degree or a PhD, even if it wasn't something that I wasn't terribly interested in, there's a good chance I would do it. If I get a free ride, not to mention money that I can spend on food and clothing and housing and all that good stuff, of course I would. And then these are the same women that are out there demanding, why doesn't my man have a bachelor's degree? Why doesn't he have a master's degree? Well, geez, you're getting free money to go through school. Maybe that man's looking at the college and saying, geez, when I've got to put $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of my own money down and I don't get it covered, yeah, it's not such a good idea. And then finally, private business grants and refunding. It says mostly justified. Funding and revenue disparity disadvantage women despite ownership growth, supporting exclusive grants to close gaps. However, the extreme ratio, near absence of male only, may not be necessary if neutral programs suffice, but current data shows targeted support aids equality. So, but here's what's interesting. It said women's owned businesses are 39 to 42% of all firms, growing 9.94% faster than men only. However, gaps persist. Average revenue 142,900 versus 474,900 for men owned. Women receive. So here's my point. Where are the men? So it says that there's a significant gap, and the reason it's trying to justify giving these women-only grants or women-only loans out is because there is a significant gap in the amount of money that is being generated by women-only businesses versus men-only businesses. My question is, what are these women-only businesses in? Are they doing actual work that makes a lot of money? Are they doing landscaping? I'm thinking of male-only businesses, landscaping, construction. I've seen a lot of women-only businesses, and they're making their cute little things on Etsy. They're maybe making jewelry. They're doing all of this luxury stuff, which guess what? That doesn't necessarily make a lot of money. Those luxury items aren't going to be the type of thing that lots of people are buying. So if you ask me, women want to make more money, then actually pick businesses where there's money to be made. Do the hard work, do the landscaping, do construction, do things that are necessary, plumbing, what else? Electricians, run those sort of businesses. But I guarantee you a lot of women don't have the skill, and honestly, they don't want to get their hands dirty. They want to do these cute little businesses that don't generate tons of money. And it's like, okay, you're welcome to do those businesses, but then why are we giving you extra money if you're not going to be generating extra money out of that? When you hear people talk like this about men, especially when those people are supposed to be in men's corner, there's really two ways as a man that you could approach it. The first is to say, F it. I'm just going to work my dead-end job. I'm going to go home. I'm going to watch some spicy content, jerk off, maybe play some games, and let the world burn around me. I can certainly understand that feeling. In my 20s and even into my 30s, I had too many days that pretty much went like that. Women don't appreciate me. Society doesn't appreciate me. So why put the effort in? I'll just get my few moments of dopamine and enjoy what pieces of my life I can. The other option is to be a good little corporate slave. You go to work, you drive in, you're all smiley and you're happy, you do everything that's asked of you and more. You get the little kudos, the little pat on the back from your boss, and that 2% yearly raise. Meanwhile, you spend your evenings and weekends simping after women that have no interest in you. Or you can find the third option. You stop chasing women. You stop being a good little wage slave. You stop putting that time, energy, and effort into others, and you put it into making the life you want. I know. It's easier said than done. I feel that pain. But do you honestly want to live your life alone with nothing to show for it? Nobody who has benefited from your efforts? Nobody who will mourn your passing? There was a time that I didn't care, but now that's changed. You should too. Don't take what Dr. K says as the end of the world. Life sucks, but it doesn't have to be a death sentence unless you want it to be. Don't allow yourself to be that way. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next video.